I'm assuming for those of you who, in context to my point, this is a first impression for, probably embarked on the same path that I did in regards to forming your perceptions, and you would be partially accurate. I'll evolve what I mean by that in a minute, because actually I'm really fascinated by this movie. It has so many more layers than I presumed. But you might look at a title like Cocaine Bear and you think to yourself, all right, I've seen plenty of bear-centric movies and movie titles, but never mixed with drugs. It's a bit unusual, I would say rather funny and comedic, so you start imagining what this film's going to be in genre, and you think, okay, perhaps a comedy movie, and then you might attribute it to being a dark comedy, more specifically, when you look at the poster, which I think is rather endearing for this type of space. I mean, a bear with a silhouette of cocaine dust, it's unusual, but I think it's well crafted. It gives a very nice presentation, in my opinion. So you start thinking, again, dark comedy, and then you look a bit deeper to substantiate your presumptions. You might, for example, consider the production credits, and in the mix of an sundry grouping of names, spotlight Phil Lord and Chris Miller in your attention, who have a pretty good background in the comedy space in terms of some of the film productions and streaming stuff that they've delivered on, at least again from my experience and what I'm familiar with. And then you might look even, in other respects, you might consider, for example, the potential of subversion of genre, considering this is coming out in the February month of 2023, specifically on the 24th, so about 10 days after Valentine's Day. And you might consider, what Hollywood likes to do in certain holiday realms. Let's say, for example, because Christmas is coming up as I'm covering this, you might think, Hollywood releases so many typical family-centric, lighthearted dramas in the holiday Christmas season, but then they also have a tendency to release stuff that's a bit more subversive. Let's say when it comes to horror or thriller, Violent Night, Silent Night, Black Christmas, stuff like that, those films come to mind. So you might have a film here that is about a bear hooked on drugs, which is very different from romance fare, which is what people, I think, typically expect during Valentine's Day season. Again, this is coming out a little post to that, but this is a bit more isolated in tone from some of the other offerings, I'm sure, coming up in that film window. But then you might also consider, even beyond that, your familiarity with animal thriller fare, and that can vary across the board in feel and in tone and in the animals spotlighted. But you might think there's a place for more comedic fare along those lines. Sharks ring a bell. Anyway, so I'm looking at this thinking, again, dark comedy. And that's half true. That's at least the way Wikipedia specifies it, although on IMDb they only call it a thriller. I haven't seen any attribution of it being a comedy according to their page. So that's very interesting. But I'd say it's more like a dark comedy with the thriller edge. At least that's what I can immediately imagine based on that trailer. I think it encapsulates the genre feel quite well. But it's actually based on a true story. That surprises me, because again, I thought this was fiction. I'm like, this is a perfect plot for what I've seen familiar animal fare before. Because it sounds bizarre, a bit erratic, but it was actually true in the state of Georgia in 1985. There was a bear, I guess, that got hooked on cocaine. Shocking. And maybe this film is taking some liberties because it is going by the inspired title, and I could see perhaps where that goes, because I don't believe, at least from the background of information that I read, and I tried to look up at least some, I don't remember if there were any casualties to the bear's first response to drugs. I mean, that's really sad to consider that actually happened to a poor bear. May he rest in peace. But then you also look at this film in terms of now what you realize, and you see the strength and the potential with that. I mean, I've already given you plenty of points to consider, but then you consider the casting attributions. This is, in fact, the one of the latest films of the late Ray Liotta. That's probably bringing a lot of people in. Casting names that I'm more familiar with, at least from my film viewing: Kerry Russell, O'Shea Jackson Jr., Alden Ehrenreich, love him, I've not seen him in a while, Jesse Tyler Ferguson, big names. Definitely pulling a crowd, I would say, at least on all those attributions. I do express some concern, though, on how well the film will deliver based on a story perspective and potential portrayal. This is being helmed in direction by Elizabeth Banks, who has spotty record, in my opinion, from what I'm familiar with, specifically speaking of Charlie's Angels. I much preferred the originals. The new one, a bit stale, in my opinion. I know it was trying to be something, but it felt so typical. I'm like, okay, if you want to talk about like spy assassin movies with somewhat of a lighthearted tone, it just wasn't enough of that. I would rather they have gone back in the original territory of the Charlie's Angels. I'm not trying to go on a tangent here, but I would have preferred camp over familiar. And that's what I felt the release was. So her direction at first, and even then I'm like, the shots and the way it's performed, the way it's presented here, and even from writing, she did the screenplay, I believe, for that movie, it was really traditional. I hope the presentation here is good. Jimmy Warden's the one doing the screenplay, at least from the look-see that I gave him on IMDb. There's not an extensive filmography. He's got this project and another one that I understand in the writing field. He's done some stuff centric in like the production side, but I don't believe he's done anything in the realm of writing. So, fresh writer on the scene. A director that I'm sure would love to have some praiseworthy attention thrown at her name to maybe disregard some past clunkers. Let's see if Cocaine Bear can do it. I think there's certainly potential for this to be good. This is what it says on IMDb if you're not familiar with the movie and you want to get a better background on it than what I've given you. An oddball group of cops, criminals, tourists, and teens converge in a Georgia forest where a 500-pound black bear goes on a murderous rampage after unintentionally ingesting cocaine. I mean, it's really silly when you read the pitch. I just hope this delivers because I could see it being a very fun film. And with your casting attributions, that would pull a lot of people in. I mean, I think that's a great mix, too. Cops, criminals, tourists, and teens. Everybody, is getting involved here. Why? Because they're probably all afraid of a bear hooked on cocaine on the loose. It wouldn't anybody be. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first trailer. I really hope this is good. I mean, I look at Elizabeth Banks and her track record, and Jimmy Warden. I mean, he could be a breakout writer here. Let's see his potential. I mean, again, this is one of the first, I forget the other name of the project he's working on, the second one, but this could be a good herald to his talents. Let's see.
FedEx!
What is that?
It's shot like some ever typical thriller films. Oh, that was a good. You get the bear to emerge from the shadow. I liked that.
Beth, we should go.
Oh, poor bear.
Dollars worth of cocaine fell from the sky this morning in Knoxville, Tennessee.
I mean, I feel bad. I'm like, hey, this is gonna be a great thriller, I'm sure.
I'm looking for my daughter.
Forest is a dangerous place.
Hey, Henry, check it out. Something got into it.
Oh,
A
no.
bear, maybe.
A lot of cocaine was lost. I need you to go and get it.
Oh, no. Oh, my gosh.
Don't eat that. Let's see what kind of effect that has on you.
The bear! It fucking did cocaine!
Yeah, I find it quite endearing. Let's see.
The bear did cocaine!
I think it's being realized really well so far.
Bear.
A bear?
It was.
Hey, that's inappropriate.
Oh. Well,
You're safe.
You want dark
Bears can't
comedy?
climb trees.
Of course I can!
is that Jesse Ferguson? It's a lot of hair. I'm used to, a shorter, like, nearer buzz cut. Not really, but.
It kind of seems like the thing that stays with the man forever.
Yeah.
Apex predator.
This is really well presented. I will give it the best compliments I can.
Out of its mind. Oh man, you.
What's wrong with that bear?
Shoot it, man!
Well, they're definitely embracing the R rating.
We have such good luck in nature.
That's going to be a hit, I think. We'll see how competent it is when the film is released. I mean, you'll have the critical reception, you'll have, the newcomer fans perhaps coming in. I mean, I don't know. Again, the casting attributions are great. It's filmed really well. I mean, how many shots do you see in other types of animal fare? It comes off as a bit traditional in some techniques, especially at least some of the interlude staging. But certain elements, let's say when the bear comes out of the shadow, I loved that. Also, the bear standing on that waterfall, that is a typical shot in other types of movies, but I absolutely loved it. I mean, I have only seen The Lion King once. Doesn't that kind of evoke the imagery of that movie with the lion on the Pride Mountain or whatever it is? I think it's Pride Mountain, isn't it? I don't know. You Lion King fans are going to hate me, I'm sure, if I'm getting this wrong. But, I mean, it's funny. It is subversive. I think it's a good word to use in these certain respects from what is typical, even though it has a typical format and presentation. I think it's hilarious, though, to put a bear front and center in the same energy that we would see, let's say, cats hooked on catnip. Now you got a bear on cocaine. I think that is hysterical, and I think the film really embraces that comedic edge. I mean, the R rating, certainly. I usually tend to prefer cleaner films in regards to, like, let's say, the swearing and stuff like that. I'll forgive this, though, because I'm like, I'm actually having a really fun time with that movie. A lot of points of strength. I did want to mention as well that little girl at the beginning, well, I guess adolescent girl, she could be maybe middle school age. Is she the same one from The Turning? I think she is. I mean, it's been a couple of years since that movie. I think it is. Brooklyn Prince. It looks like her. Yep, it's her. Turning sucked as a movie. But oh, and for all the potential the trailer had. She was good in it, though. I liked her in that movie, so it would be interesting to see her here. Grown up a bit. And I think a much better thriller. One that really embraces, I would say, the absurd, and has a lot of fun doing it. I mean, I get that experience. I'm brought in. I want to see it immediately. We have a couple months to wait, given this is coming out in February, but I'm pretty happy with it. What are your guys' thoughts with Cocaine Bear? I mean, again, it's been unusual, but I appreciate the layers to the project. I think it does in some ways come across as at least original in convention, and it does have the inspirational background of a true story. I mean, horrifically. I think this is definitely taking a lot of liberties, and that's more so looking at it as just an inspiration of pitch. But the casting's great. I hope Elizabeth Banks does a good job in regard to the direction. I'm sure she would love that as well. Writing, we'll see. I mean, one of the first entries again for, what was his name? Again, early writer, so Jimmy Warden. I have to get used to his talents. Could be good, and I admire the presentation in many respects. Let me know what your thoughts are down below on it, but I am very warmed up with Cocaine Bear. I think it looks pretty good. I'm excited to see it in February. I mean, it's definitely different from, let's say, Valentine's Day type fare. It's been unusual and seems isolated in its presence, but hey, I'm for that. It looks great. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.